Hey, welcome back to Brighter Rays. This week is Resurrection Sunday week, and so we're looking at a special passage. We're looking at Acts chapter 26, and we're looking at mainly at Paul's question in verse 20. In Acts 26, verse 8 is what the main question we're looking at. 26:8 says, "Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead?" Why is that thought incredible? So we're talking about the problem. The problem is the idea of the resurrection of the dead. Why is that a problem? Well, there's probably lots of reasons we could talk about, but let's examine this idea, why people have problems with this idea. First, weak men and women throughout church history and today have altered, softened, or ignored the doctrine of the resurrection. Right? Some people have just flat out ignored the fact that Jesus raised from the dead. They'll create some kind of story about it, or Jesus is just a good man. I'm talking about in church, right? The Gnostics just believed that if he was here, then he wasn't a man, right? And so he didn't need to rise from the dead. He didn't actually rise from the dead because he wasn't a person, so he didn't die. And this is people who were teaching in the church. So, you have these ideas that came up that kind of discounted. You have to get rid of the humanity of Jesus or the divinity of Jesus, and then you kind of, ignore the whole doctrine of resurrection. People have altered it and changed it. People have softened the idea of the resurrection, just the way we're talking about Jesus, who was fully God and fully man, and he died, and he came back to life 3 days later. That's the story of Easter. That's the Resurrection Sunday story. We shouldn't change that. We shouldn't, soften it. We shouldn't pretend that that's not the case. We shouldn't pretend that's not why the church is here. Because of that, right? The church still exists. Otherwise, the church as it is today would look completely different. We'd still be underneath the Jewish system. But we're not, because of Jesus coming back to life. So that's the first point. Number two, we believe that the bodies of the dead will rise again. It will be changed, but it will be the same in identity. See, the problem is the idea is that the bodies will rise from the dead. There's a lot of different ideas about that, but it will be changed, right? The new body, at the resurrection of the dead, the bodies of people will be changed. That's true. But they'll be the same person. And so the same identity here does not mean the same substance. After all, the stuff of our bodies that we die with is not the same. The stuff of our body that we die with is not the same that we're born with, right? Cells are constantly dying and being replaced. Atoms are constantly replaced. But still our body. The molecules change. They die off and they get new ones. And so, DNA is constantly being replaced, regenerated and being replaced. So, if we think about, but yeah, it's still my body, right? I didn't get a different body. And it's like, well, I got a brand new body. It's the same one, even though all the stuff that makes up my body is different. I had to eat food and take on the nutrients and stuff like that. And what I ate, becomes my cells and becomes my body. And so the idea here is that, what I was born with is not the same thing that I'll die with. All the molecules that were in my body when I was born are now gone, right? Replaced by something else. Those are somewhere else in the earth, but they're not with me. Maybe some of them have left and came back. I don't know. Could be. That's the idea. Some people go, oh, what happens if people die and all this kind of stuff, and their bodies break down as the same exact body. Well, what if I have a molecule in me and then it goes into you? Well, see, that's not the problem. That's not the issue, because obviously things change over time. Now, the incredible comes in when you think about all the bodies of all the humans, all the bodies of all humans that have existed and now are decayed. We find bones buried here and there when we do new excavations. It'd be easier to believe in the resurrection if the body stayed intact, right? or at least were mummified and they were stuck in a place. So it's like, oh, okay, those very bones will rise. But many people's bones are destroyed. Many people's are cremated. Some were eaten by wild animals, or they went overboard on a ship, and then they were eaten by the sea creatures. And so their bodies are at least scattered everywhere. If you're cremated, then if your loved ones take your ashes outside and spread them into the wind, then what was your dying molecules are spread everywhere. And so that's why people are, oh, how could that happen? Your body's not everyone's body is in the ground, and not okay. But that's not what we're talking about. You don't have to have the same exact molecules. The Bible doesn't say that. It doesn't get that technical. It doesn't get that scientific. But the idea is still sound. Is that you will have a body. It's your body. It won't be a foreign body. It won't be a body that's strange to you, right? But it'll be different. So that fits. That fits with what the Bible talks about. Now, what is more incredible is when you think of all the bodies that have been cremated, eaten by animals, lost to sea. Their bodies are completely absorbed in the stuff of the earth. The Bible tells us that all the bodies of the righteous and the unrighteous will rise. There's another problem. How many bodies is that? That's a lot of bodies to come back to life. All those people that have ever existed. Is there enough stuff out there to create all the bodies and all that? That's a lot of people. So some people get hung up perhaps on the amount of humanity that has to come back. That's a lot of molecules, right? A lot of stuff that has to be there. The thing about I don't know how many. I don't know. I'd have to look at it. I should look that up to see how many people they estimate have ever lived. Of course, you're going to have hugely differing viewpoints because of, if you're a young Earth or old Earth. Or young Earth is not a problem, right? Because yeah, you might have trillions of people, but hey, you can make trillions of people out of the stuff of the earth, no problem. But if you're gonna say it's old Earth and you got a long time, and really just the people are rising from the dead too. So is that a big problem? I don't know. The bodies have risen will never decompose again. What is that like? It's hard for people to understand that idea. What is it like to have a body that never decomposes, that never breaks down, it doesn't wear out? It's not going to grow old, because the aging of our bodies is based on that. And that's what people are hoping for, right? That one day we'll discover, the fountain of youth and all that kind of stuff. Some kind of serum that makes you last forever. Now, to last forever in this world would be kind of crappy, but to last forever in a perfect place would be awesome, yeah. So, that's the idea. So people have a problem with the fact that things, we don't know what it means to live in a body that decomposes. So it's like, what is that? I don't. What does it mean to live forever? People have dreams about it, but they still struggle with that idea. Another problem is that there's no analogy on Earth that corresponds to this. Some people use the butterfly. There's like your cocoon, you're the little caterpillar, then you turn into cocoon, and then the butterfly. And even the Apostle Paul uses the seed idea. But these ideas really ultimately fall short. I mean, if you look at 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says, but someone will ask, how are the dead raised? What kind of body do they come? And you foolish person, he says. That's kind of funny. It's like, well, we're just asking what kind of body is going. He says, you foolish person. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And what you sow is not the body that is to be, but a bare kernel, perhaps of wheat or some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own. Not all flesh is the same, but there's one kind for humans, another for for animals, another for birds, and another for fish. There are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is of one kind, and the glory of the earthly is another. There's one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for stars differ from star in glory. So It is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It's raised in glory. It's sown in weakness. It's raised in power. It's sown a natural body. It raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there's also a spiritual body. Thus it is written, the first Adam became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. But it's not the spiritual that is first, but the natural, and then the spiritual. The first man was from earth, a man of dust. The second man is from heaven. As with the man of dust, so also are those who are of the dust. As the man of heaven, so also are those who are of heaven. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we shall also bear the image of the man of heaven. So you see here he uses the sowing and then the reaping idea. So if something is sown, like the heaven, the physical body, then you'll have a spiritual body, which is coming from heaven, where this physical body is really just part of the earth, but he's talking about a body that supersedes the natural. It's a spiritual body, he calls it. And so it's different. We still believe it's a physical body, but it's now it's a physical body that is spiritual, which is really kind of weird to think about, but that's what he says. So, but then it's like, okay, you see the seed the seed doesn't actually die, right? Because it doesn't have, like, it wasn't alive before. So it's kind of weird, because the seed just goes in the ground, and then like the potential for life is in the seed, and then it grows. It's not like the seed is actually completely dead. If the seed's completely dead, then it's not going to grow. You only put water and sunshine on it. If you just let seeds sit outside and they rot. But so yeah, it's kind of weird. It's not a one-for-one kind of analogy, but it makes sense. I mean, you sow, you reap. That's the kind of idea that he's going with. But still, there's something lacking there, because there's nothing else like it, and nothing else has happened that's like that. So that's the problem. The ashes and dust of human remains have no potential for life. So, I mean, you can sow the human body into the ground, but there's no life in it. There's nothing in that shell. It's just going to break down. It's going to fall apart. It's not going to produce life. Unlike in the seed, where you put that into the ground, it's going to produce life. It doesn't have, the human body in and of itself does not have the potential for life. And so that's where the analogy kind of breaks down. So again, we're kind of stuck with, yeah, it kind of makes sense. I kind of get it, but yet I still don't. Because there's something missing there. The analogy is not perfect. And then you get the idea of, in Ezekiel, the dry bones, the valley of dry bones. It's kind of interesting, but it says, the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he brought me out into the spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the middle of the valley. It was full of bones. And he led me around among them, and behold, there were many on the surface of the valley. And behold, they were very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, can these bones live? And then, what does Ezekiel say? Oh, Lord God, you know. Exactly. I mean, they're dead. I don't know. Probably not. You know, God. So he doesn't really have an answer. He just says, well, God, you know. You know if these bones can live. They're dead right now. They shouldn't live. Can they? And that's kind of the question. So you see the struggle here. You see the problem. Like, this idea of resurrection from the dead is not normal. There's some things that give us a hint, like the butterfly and the seeds and that kind of stuff. So there's somewhat that idea in there, but it's not exactly the same. And so the resurrection of the dead is not comparable to anything else in the universe, and anything else that we know, that we can point to. So you're like, here it is. Well, here it is. So that's the problem, right? And the fact that, normally when you scatter stuff to the wind, it's not going to come back together. And so it's unusual, it's different. It's something that we're not familiar with. And so people struggle with this idea, and they always have. And they will until it actually does happen. And then people will finally fully understand, like, oh, this is what it meant all along. And so we're looking forward to that day. Unless you're an unbeliever, then you shouldn't be looking forward to that day. You should be scared. Because there'll be a day of punishment. It's a scary day for those who do not believe, but for those who do believe, it's a day of celebration. So that's the end of our study for today. Come back next time and we'll look at the next part of this Why Do You Think It's Incredible study.